Doctor, are you living the dream or just dreaming of living? It is my honor to announce the PDA 20th Anniversary Special Conference this September 12th to the 14th in Frisco, Texas, the nation's leading course on dental practice growth. If you feel isolated as a leader who is frustrated that your schedule is unproductive, maybe your team is disjointed, or your systems are inefficient, this is the conference for you. The PDA 20th Anniversary Conference has all new features, including keynote speaker Emmitt Smith, who is a Pro Football Hall of Fame running back and entrepreneur. You can choose your own educational track to customize your learning experience. Go to www.productivedentist.com and click the pop-up, or select Productive Dentist Academy Conference under the Dental CE and Events tab. That's www.productivedentist.com. Seating is limited. Register today, and we look forward to helping you make your dreams become reality. You can't delegate leadership. You do have to be open and curious and willing to shift your mindset. And that can be frustrating for any leader. We get stuck in our ruts, especially if we are somewhat successful.
Welcome to Investment Grade Practices Podcast, where we believe private practice dentists deserve to get the lifestyle today while building an asset for tomorrow. Join your host, Victoria Peterson, to design the practice of your dreams and secure your financial independence. Let's get started.
Welcome to part 3 of the 4-part series, Collaboration Between Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. I am your host, Regan Robertson, and Investment Grade Practices Podcast with Victoria Peterson. Hello, Victoria.
Hello, Regan.
You know, in the first 2 parts of the series, our theme is above and below the line. Kudos to Skip Miller, who wrote Selling Above and Below the Line with our theme. The first was bridging the gap between vision and reality. And the part 2 was metrics above and below the line. And this week, we are focusing on cadence above and below the line.
Yes.
What are your thoughts, Victoria, around cadence? Do we do everything at once? Do we meet every single day? What do we meet about? Do we do it weekly, monthly? Who's involved? There's a lot of big questions around it. And I don't mean to make light or sound light of it, because if you don't have certain areas keyed in and tuned right, you can overwhelm your team. You can become ineffective. You can make yourself overly busy for very detrimental reasons and think you're doing the right things, and it's actually pushing you backwards. So from a seasoned business professional, I would love to understand, how are we defining cadence in this context?
I'm laughing and smiling because I'm raising my hand saying, yes, I've made all of those mistakes and I still do on a daily basis. I'm such a visionary, big picture leader that I'm sure that our team is going to groan and say, what is Victoria doing talking about cadence and process? But I love cadence and process. As a visionary, it's tough for me to stick to it because I'm like a 5-year out. So my struggle as a leader is always bringing it back. And you're brilliant at this, which is why I love our 2 podcasts hosting together, because I'm out there and you say, okay, let's dial that back. What has to be done in the next 12 months, 6 months, 3 months, 1 month? Daily, weekly, moving forward. So I think that's the beauty. So the above the line piece is to go out far enough that you can see the whole picture. You know, sometimes as leaders, we get myopic and we're just like, how do I survive today? But organically just moving from today to tomorrow to the next day. As Stephen Covey says, first, you've got to make sure that your ladder is on the right wall. So the above the line piece is, if you're climbing the ladder, make sure it's on the right wall. So that's the above the line piece. And then the below the line piece is what is the rung on each step of that ladder. And that's where the cadence comes. You know, if you've got long legs, maybe you can take 2 rungs at a time. Most people can't take 3. So trying to do too much too quick can overwhelm the team. You spoke to that. And I think it depends on the stage of business that you're in. You know, we talked about that last time. If I'm young, I'm startup, I'm scrappy, I've got energetic, enthusiastic people, we're just there and we're making bank, right? Like, get them in, let's get the revenue going, let's get some systems built. They're not perfect. We're okay that they're not perfect because we're all excited. And then you break through to that next level where it's more predictable. And that's where I think the cadence really gets honed, in that predictability. But you still have flexibility, you still have place for innovation, and you've got other things that might trickle in. When you get to durable, I think that's where the cadence really gets locked, and it's more difficult to make sweeping changes in the business.
Really? Tell me more about that. I'm genuinely curious. At durable, you think it gets a little bit tougher.
Yeah, because it's durable. As an owner, I ought to be able to step away from the business and
Mhm.
know exactly what's going to happen day to day, week to week, month to month. Right. So that's the hallmark of an investment grade practice is the doctor can take a month off and he's going to come back and it's going to look like the same practice that he left. That's the expectation. It's durable, it's predictable. Employees are treated well, according to the way we set it up. Patients are being treated well, revenues are flowing consistently, profits are flowing consistently. So if you go away for a month and one of your partners or your associate buys, a CAD CAM Miller or, buys a 3D printer, and you're like, wait a minute,
Whoops.
that wasn't the plan. So the spontaneity isn't quite there when it's durable. It's more planned out. So I
Yeah,
think
that makes a lot of sense to me. That yes, you have to be more intentional at that point. I interviewed with Chad Johnson, Dr. Gwen Buck, and she talked about her journey going out of network. And it really highlighted something, Victoria, that you've talked about multiple times in scheduling to productivity. There's that first phase, that first template that talks about getting up the $300 an hour and where you're at as a practice when you are making that initial climb. And
yeah,
then the variable changes. And this, I think, is very important when it comes to cadence also. Once you hit your profitability incentive point, you've
yes.
explained that variable shifts to time. And Dr. Gwen Buck, I'm putting a pin here, listeners, go listen to her podcast because it highlighted the importance of time. Very intentional. And how you meet, I think, does have to reflect what it is that you're focusing on as a company. And it can feel difficult. I'm sharing from personal experience within PDA. You have to get a system in. You have to set up a rhythm to communicate with your team on the goals. And early in my leadership, I set up that cadence. Really, I mean, even based on your direction, you meet once a week or you meet once a month. And so I was like, okay, I do this. I have to set this up. And then I would say, well, what am I going to talk about? And that's when the shift can go locked in and focused, or it can start to skew and you start to fill the time thinking that you just have to meet the date and you don't necessarily have to talk about the metrics and what's important. And we talked about the metrics. We talked about bridging that gap. That's why it's important to do those things in that order. And I think the third component to this before establishing that cadence you touched on briefly is how much change can your team implement at any given time?
Right.
So, Victoria, if you think about a dental practice in varying stages of its evolution, we agreed vision and reality should be the big vision. That should be the starting point, getting your mission clear and your key characteristics. And then understanding your metrics are the second part. Team adoption. What have you seen in your years of consulting and advising about what an average team can handle in any given year?
Ooh, um, it depends on the maturity of the team and the effectiveness of the systems. But I would say foundationally as a communication cadence, there are things that we talk about every day in the
Mhm,
morning huddle. Who's
mhm.
on the schedule? What opportunities are here? Something as simple as Reagan is coming in today and her two children are past due. And I know that they were talking about braces for Ryland, right?
Mhm.
So, an awareness of when you come in, hi, how's Ryland? Did you follow through on that consult? It's time for her cleaning. Let's get her and Ben in. So the simple daily actions of, as Bruce says, we got two goals on a daily basis. Number one, to take incredible care of our patients, which that's an example of it. And number two, to make our goal. So are we on or off goal for today for production and collections? And have we served every patient to the highest level? That's your daily cadence. That's what's top of mind every day. And then every week you just extend that and test it. So every week, whoever is in charge of new patient flow would have their metric that said, we saw 6 new patients this week, 3 of them reappointed, 3 of them didn't. What am I going to do about those 3 who didn't? Are they in an automatic outbound email or text campaign? When am I going to call them next? What do I have to do to clear the financial obstacles for them? There should be some activity for those 3. So those kinds of things are what you look at as a weekly cadence. So my daily on or off goal, weekly, do I need to catch up before the week is over? Who do I need to call? Who's in hygiene? Who can we shift over? So like making your goal on your week. And then monthly might be our big picture projects. So let's say that we are introducing Invisalign, which is kind of a big thing, but we're introducing a new service. And so we're going to take the next 60 days to get integrated in this. And we would set up the plan on this day where, we've started marketing, we've got our cases coming in, we're tracking them. At the end of the month, we're going to say, how are we doing? Who's feeling confident? What's happening with our training? What's happening with our marketing? Are we integrated? So I would say the monthly is more our project management and our overall big goals of what we're working on.
This makes all the sense to me in the world because you get what you focus on. And
Yes.
I've been dinged multiple times for I look to referrals and reviews first.
Yes.
And we focus on the internal. It's the lowest cost of acquisition. I will never stop talking about it. It's also a great indicator of how your team is following a cadence. Have they adopted this as a new habit? And it's so easy, I think, especially for entrepreneurial business owners, dentists, you, Victoria, 5 years out visionary. That is your highest and best. And so it's so easy to assume that though that cadence is in place and
Right.
go about your way. When we make that intentional look, though, to not just report on the data, but ask ourselves, is it to our benchmark standards? Is it where we want it to be? Do we see a change in it? That is the importance of the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly touches. It is so critically important to look at those. And I think assign people within the practice to their areas of responsibility.
Yes.
People want to contribute to the success of the dental practice. And so in marketing, for example, if you have support, if you've got a fractional CMO, an external agency working with you, phenomenal. Doctor, who is the person that you are designating in that practice that can help take shared ownership and responsibility? Here's the kicker, I think, with Cadence. Once that's assigned, how do you make sure that you are following up in relationship and know that it's working for you? That to me is one of those little things that can get missed for weeks, then months, and then years.
Right.
And it really can damage the success of an organization if you're not thinking from that. So an administrative.
Go ahead. An administrative.
I was just going to say, if you find an administrative team member and they are passionate around marketing or around a specific initiative, you talked about Invisalign, giving them that responsibility and then creating that metrics and asking them about their cadence, how they're going to be reporting that together, brings them into the conversation. And I think it's extremely powerful and it helps delegate. The trick is don't just delegate and walk away.
Yeah.
Understand those numbers.
So many business cliches are coming into my head, like inspect what you expect. So the cadence is set by the leader. This is what I'm committed to. I think there's a cadence for education as well. There's a lot of virtual training in the marketplace now for office managers, for team leads, things like that. But even within our own organization, we've got hundreds of coaching clients, and we'll have the same 6 or 8 office managers on our monthly empowered leadership forum. And the reason is always, I'm too busy. My doctor won't support me being on this call. So you have to ask yourself, if you're moving towards durability, if you're building an investment grade practice that can run without you, when do you expect your team to to gain the experience and the knowledge that they lead, knowledge like conflict resolution, employee life cycle management, recruiting, onboarding, offboarding, benefit investigation, like all of that can be delegated, but you don't delegate it to a second grade school teacher that you just hired because she didn't want to be in the school system anymore and you made her a receptionist and everybody quit and you elevated her to office manager.
Mm.
So if you've got that educational gap, there has to be a cadence in education. And so I think that's probably one of the most overlooked things for dentists. And it goes to another cliche, you can delegate everything but leadership. You
Mhm.
have to, you are the leader, you have to make the decisions. And one of those decisions is how much time will I carve out for my team to learn and grow? And what resources will I give them to learn and grow? Because I can step back as a manager, and that's where doctors hate managing. I hate managing. It's exhausting because, there's a lot of people with a lot of questions and it takes a lot of time. If you want to be in the mouth with patients, you have to train the management within the team. And you can only do that when you know the person taking over can do it as well or better than you.
Mhm.
That's when you have the confidence to let go of those reins a little bit. So in terms of cadence, it all goes out the window if you're advocating, like, hey, I hired these people, they should do it, or you're delegating without resources. It's hard to keep up the cadence of competency and move the business forward if you're not surrounded by people who really understand their jobs and are growing and learning.
You bring up a really exceptional point, and that is the profitability per employee and what that employee is worth to the practice itself, and then aligning that with activities and educational opportunities that best serve themselves and the practice. That is a wonderful and powerful formula. You and PDA does walk that talk. So PDA is I think exceptional at aligning educational opportunities that allow our employees to grow in their controlling idea, if we say it to quote Donald Miller, but controlling ideas so that we can lift up the organization together. I was on a client call. I love that you brought this up. I was on a client call recently, and this particular office manager was engaging in I would say a series of initiatives. We'll just say a series of initiatives, and the business advisor on the call asked the doctor, "How much does this office manager make again?" And they responded, and the business advisor replied back, "What type of value would it be if we had your office manager had the time free for them to focus on this instead?" And the value difference in the tasks, the daily tasks and the cadence that this office manager would engage in was pretty stark. It was a nice, sizable gap that would be felt positively as far as revenue goes for the practice. And you could see the light bulb turn on in the doctor's head. And so you have to, I think, like you said, you can't delegate leadership. You do have to be open and curious and willing to shift your mindset. And that can be frustrating for any leader. We get stuck in our ruts, especially if we are somewhat successful. Most of the practices that come to us, they are not desperate. They're doing good. They're often doing solid and they're comfortable. In order to get to that next level, it can be tricky to get your wagon wheels out of that rut and looking in a new direction. And I think aligning, like you said, the education with that. And to quote Adrienne Reynolds, our Chief Human Resources Officer, she certainly blew my mind with aligning our job descriptions and core competencies together and putting, all the pay bands and where our industry's at and looking at things competitively. That got me thinking about our business in a different light as well. And everything flowed from that. The clarity is incredible.
I love it. I think we're just flowing right into our fourth topic, which is going to be support.
Yep.
Because cadence and support, how fast can I do something? How quickly can I implement initiatives or, get to that place of predictability? It really does depend on the support that you surround yourself with.
Yes. Agreed. So to summarize in this, your cadence might be different for your practice. It does determine is determined by a few factors: your team's willingness to change, your clarity, where your goals are at, how crystal clear you are on those, and your milestones. So your own Gantt chart for your economic objectives. So once you have those first two pieces in place, you can start to think about the cadence and how much your team is willing to commit to the morning huddle. PDA always recommends the morning huddle. I don't believe I'll ever hear us say differently. And the weekly and the monthly sessions. And I have seen varying results, to dentists that come into us that hold those or don't hold those. Some dentists use Traction by Gino Wickman. Some use the Business Made Simple model. Some have made up their own. It's kind of all over the board. So I feel like once we get past that morning huddle, it can get a little bit fuzzy. So my recommendation is, if you are clear and you understand everyone's role in the practice, they are clear on their responsibilities. Most importantly, when you decide the weekly, the monthly, and the quarterly, who is going to own each of those metrics in there? And do they understand what it means? Do they understand why it matters to the practice? And do they understand how they can influence the results themselves? That was the other thing. Can you influence the results? It's kind of like bonus plans that say, we'll bonus you on the performance of the practice. That's fantastic. Okay, wonderful. How can I personally contribute to that? That is my own personal cadence, and I want to be responsible for that.
I love it.
Final thoughts, Victoria?
Cadence isn't a matter of personality, it's a matter of process. So even if someone can't be a part of a meeting, the meetings go on, right? So make sure that you have a proxy and that you're well informed. Make sure that you have your fingers on the pulse as a leader, and you've got those lines of communication going up above and below the line, and I'm really envious of brick and mortar doctors who have all their employees in one building. That's easier than being a virtual company with 3 different divisions spread across 17 states. So we oftentimes have we do a great job, but there are times due to time zone, this or that, where some know, some don't, and we're like catching up in this virtual world. So I think that plays a role in cadence as well.
Well, thank you, Victoria. I look forward to the fourth and final part of our series, which is support. And as I often say on Everyday Practices, success requires support. So I will see you soon.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Investment Grade Practices Podcast. If you find value in this episode, help us spread the word by passing it along to a dental friend, subscribe, and give us a like on iTunes or Spotify. Learn more about building your investment grade practice at productivedentist.com today.